All right, let's do this. Let's see. All right, now it's switched over. They can see us now. I'm going to make us bigger on the screen since it's just the both of us instead of the typical situation.
What's up, everyone? What y'all burning on?
All right. So I'll do the typical podcast intro in a second, but I'm just kind of getting everything set up. You guys all have to deal with me getting that stuff in order. But cool. I think we're good to go. Let me know if you guys should be able to hear us and see us good. All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are live right now on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. You are listening or watching the Cannabis YouTube show. It's a weekly cannabis show where we talk about all sorts of things cannabis related and fungi, anything in that kind of realm of topics. And today it's a live show. We're live streaming to YouTube, so we're taking live questions from the live chat. We also got at least one or two questions on our Cannabis members only community. So I'll pull that up at some point. But before we get too far into it, first off, I need to make a shout out to our Cannabis members. Everyone in our Cannabis members only community. Folks can join it's an app that you can download, or it's just that you can use it as a website, and you can post your own content in there, and you can see our live streams. When we do interviews for the podcast, we live stream those into our members only community. So you can join that community for as little as $4.20 a month. And if you use the code BUZZ, you get your first month free. We really appreciate your support over there. That support helps keep the show going. That's kind of why the members only community is there, is to kind of help support the show, and we really appreciate it. Helps send JR to Emerald Cup and go to farms and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the shtick behind it. I've had some questions come up recently about the community, so I wanted to address that. Also gonna shout out our supporters, our sponsors. So we're gonna get through those real quick. First off, shout out to lostcoastplanttherapy.com. If you need an IPM spray to take down some fungi or other things that are trying to kind of take down your plants, I've talked about recently how I had like an aphid issue pop up, and the Lost Coast Plant Therapy really helped me out. So check them out, lostcoastplanttherapy.com. We really appreciate their support. And then last shout out for me is SacredThreeMushrooms.com. If you need to get your own fungi home grow kit, it's got everything you need in a kind of a plastic shoebox type container, everything you need, and plus they have access to spores. So if you want to grab some other stuff while you're there, you can do that. Use the code CANNABUZZ for 10% off your order. And then I'm going to throw it over to JR.
Thanks, Q. I'm going to go ahead and do the Tiki and Raw announcements. I like that we're able to kind of toggle back and forth between their seeds and their cuts. Today, we're going to talk about the cut offers. It's buy one, get one at TikiCuts.com. And I just got done finishing up that Hawaiian snow cone, and everyone seems to love it. And it has a very soaring, euphoric kind of high. And so check out that at TikiCuts.com. And it also washes really well from what I hear. So they have the buy one, get one. And then secretselections.io. That's where you can get all the raw genetics. And in every order, while supplies last, you could get one of either Gary Payton or Trop Cherry in your order with secretselections.io. So hit those dudes up. Big support.
Awesome. Well, we're already thinking about shows for the new year. This is we're recording this episode on December 22nd, so just a couple days before Christmas. So we're already starting to book some guests for the new year. Starting to think about what we want to talk about. Before we know it, Emerald Cup's going to be happening, so we're going to be in the thick of things before too long. But we wanted to do this fun live stream. JR's got a group of topics that he wanted to talk through as well. So growers, we're going to get into the grow talk. So we'll get into that. in a second. I'm gonna, while JR talks in a moment, I'm gonna pick up the question that we got from our members only cannabis community. We had a member ask a question that he wanted us to address, so I was gonna pull that up in a second. But first off, we just had an episode last week that was a little bit different than our typical situation. So we had Joe Pietri, and we had some mixed reactions. It wasn't all bad or wasn't all good or whatever. It wasn't like any one way or the other. It was just kind of some interesting comments come in a couple times. And so I just, anyways, I wanted to, JR, if you wanted to chat a little bit about, kind of inviting Joe on, and then maybe I'll make a comment and then I'll pull in that comment or the question from the community.
Excellent, no problem. So, the episode with Joe is something that I've come across, since I've been doing this podcasting thing for, whatever. Anyways, Joe is one of our elders. He's one of the elders of our cannabis industry and community. And all of those elders have contributions they've made, and all of those elders, for what it's worth, good, bad, or however you feel about them and what they say, there are the contributions that they make, and their stories and their narrative, I feel like, are worthy of being told. Some of the other elders that we have in our community are Ed Rosenthal. Eddie Lepp has passed away. We had the fortune of interviewing him on the Do Grow show. I was able to book that. Mila Jensen is an elder of ours. And I know Dirk's going to give me shit, but Dirk from Lost Coast Plant Therapy is also one of our elders, and he's been in his community, helping his community for a long time. And we also got Tim Blake, who is also one of our elders and is hugely responsible for all of the things that have come from Emerald Cup, whether you think it's good, bad, or whatever. So when we interview these folks, I like with Joe, I don't set these line of questionings. I just kind of let him riff. And I made a post that was kind of poking at the Dutch and kind of poking at Skunk Man Sam. And I invite people to read Joe's books. Before you make any opinions, before you make any comments, read the man's books and see if what he's talking about jives with you. We all have, our journeys, especially in this cannabis industry and in this community. And so how we navigate and how we move is big. And so I want to be respectful of these elders. And I want to be able to let their stories be told. And if all the people that he was calling out for what he felt like were his reasons, Todd McCormick, Skunk Man, Sam, Bubble Man, any of those guys are welcome to come on and talk to us about their journeys and about their experiences and what they feel that they've brought to the table. And moving on, no, how do you feel about that, Q? Really?
I guess I felt very mixed about it, to be honest with you, because I don't have as much of a connection to the history of it. So I'm kind of more thinking about going forward. And so what happened in the past, before I was even growing, like doesn't really matter as much to me, to a certain extent, just being honest with you. So that's as I've been trying to kind of process my like feelings or thoughts or whatever, like that's kind of one thing that kind of came out through it, where I was like, I think I can't appreciate some of it as much because I just don't have as much like emotionally invested in it or whatever, to where I'm like really pissed at those guys or something like that. Because to me, my reaction was like, Cannabis is typically a more like inspiring, interesting show to listen to that's more positive, and we try to leave it on positive notes. And the last like 20 minutes of that episode was pretty negative, and so that kind of made me feel kind of negative. And then we got not a ton, but we got a few negative comments. And so I guess for me, there was elements of it where there's like parts of YouTube and content in general is going down this rabbit hole of like where everyone has to have like a conspiratorial worldview about something and be really negative about whatever. And so I think that kind of, I had a knee jerk reaction to that. And so I guess my only comments were is like, uh cannabis isn't gonna head into the direction where we're all of a sudden like, you see this happen a lot in other topics where all of a sudden it's like, this is a political show now, and it started out as like a topic about something else and now it went off in this other direction. So that's the like, we're never gonna do that. We're gonna stick on our topics about growing and cannabis and things kind of in that realm, and we dabble into other topics. So that was my only other reaction. I don't feel super negatively overall about the episode. I just had kind of mixed feelings, which was kind of a new-ish experience for me with some of our
Same.
episodes. So that was just, I think, the most difficult part about it, where I was like, I didn't really like the episode to a certain extent, and I had to kind of figure out why. So that's all.
Yeah, and I even myself had to kind of process all that went down and the way it went down because, like you said, I think we put out so much of what Joe had to say in such a short amount of time that it came off kind of like intense. And so Joe has made a lot of contributions to breeding. I mean, if you just even look at his Durban poison alone, that cut and that has been used in a lot of different, breeding projects, and his SFVOG, and I mean many, many more. I mean, I got a brief look at his back in the day when Phylos was doing cool stuff. Um, they had a pretty good map of Joe's stuff, and it's an insane amount of stuff that he's contributed, and so, and he has a story that I still kind of want to mine out. But moving forward, I had a post conversation with Joe, and I was just like, bro, that whole thing with the Dutch and all that stuff in the past, all that stuff doesn't really matter anymore. That whole generation is pretty much either old, dead, broke, or incarcerated. And so, we have a whole new generation of people, and it's important that they know the history of how they got to where they are. And it's important to know these people who have made these sacrifices, because not only did they put their life on the line by the eyes of the law, but also quite often with the people that they were dealing with, and they were bringing in medicine to our people in a time when it was not cool at all. And so a certain amount of respect has to be paid to these elders. And so I told Joe moving forward, because he has this project about a preservation project with a lot of his incredible genetics with Seed is Art. And Chaz is going to come on with Joe, and I told Joe we want to just kind of move forward in the direction of honoring the genetic contributions he's made, and then moving forward with some of the projects that he has in mind. And one of them is the triploids. And there are a few people in the genetic world, moving in that direction. So I'm excited to get Chaz on and talk to someone who can give us some, knowledge about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that was good to just kind of talk about that. But yeah, it's interesting to have these conversations with folks, and we'll have more interviews to come in the new year for sure with lots of interesting people. So let's see. We had a question come in from Mr. Chuck in the Cannabis members only community at cannabis.app, and he had like several questions, but I think one of them I thought was kind of interesting, or I could relate to, was he was essentially saying, he was talking about curing, drying and curing. And we know that there's ideal temperatures and humidity, and he was essentially saying like, what if I only have the space to dry stuff right now as my garage, and the humidity is like not too bad, but it can go way below 60, because it's the winter right now. So he was kind of asking, what do I do? And it's kind of one of those things where as a grower, as at least at least for me, I could relate where you don't always have the perfect environment or things that you need, so you kind of have to pick the best of the worst situation or whatever the right saying is. So I kind of curious, what do you think someone should do in that sort of situation? Should they try to dry inside their house, which might be closer to like 70 degrees or something? What do you think someone should do?
I think the one that's the most damaging, especially this time of year, is moisture. So wherever you can pull off the coolest temperatures with the humidity, that's not gonna F up your flower. So if you do have to do a little more of a quick dry in the house, knowing that your humidity levels are in check, that's probably more advisable than going out into a cold, wet environment and having, really soggy hay. Because when we dry super wet, it gets oxidized and it smells like hay, and the terps are blah. So, a little more of a quick dry would be, um, if you had to, better off for you than it would be to try to do that kind of situation. But that being said, we're moving into the holidays. Ho, ho, ho. Now's when the time you sacrifice getting those underwear, socks, and shoes, and you buy yourself cool grow equipment. And you say, hey, fams, I don't want nothing. I just want an air conditioner. Or hey, fams, I don't want anything. I just want a dehumidifier or whatever. If that's the case, you can kind of pull that off. But yeah, my advice to that is to know those parameters. I mean, obviously, we have, our set parameters that we want to be, and just scope it out to the best of your ability where you think you could pull that off for at least 10 days. I mean, you want to try to get it to dry evenly and slow enough that you get at least a 10-day dry out of it.
The only thing I'll add there is if you're looking for like a beginner level tent, Vivo Sun has like pretty aggressive discounts these days. Obviously, a lot of our contemporaries also partner with AC Infinity. Neither of these folks is sponsored, so if they want to sponsor us and give us a
Yeah,
discount
come
code,
on.
we'd love it. But I was just gonna say Vivo Sun because I've got a couple. They've hooked me up with a couple tents, and I've used them for these sorts of situations. They're not super heavy duty or anything like that. They're not a Gorilla Grow tent, but they're an entry level tent. So if you need something, just you want to spend $120 or maybe probably even less to dry some of your weed, then that's a decent option.
Yeah. No, it's a good deal. And
So
sometimes even just having a little tent, set aside as your dryings where you can control that environment separate of, whatever.
totally, totally. So I was gonna ask you, JR, to kind of up the next set of topics. It looked like you kind of wanted to talk through some things. Pheno hunting was one of them. So how about set us up, and then I'll go grab my dog, who you guys probably heard barking in the background.
Oh, and Jasper too. Come on, kids. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about was, kind of checking the boxes. When we're pheno hunting and we're cracking seeds, each one of those seeds are an individual. And they're as individual as Jasper is right there before us. And so you're hunting through them, and when you're selecting these phenos, you're looking to check a bunch of boxes. And so I thought it would be cool if we just kind of run down the boxes in no particular order. I mean, if you were to kind of judge the way a person judges herb, is the first thing they do is they see it. So boom, it attracts their eyes. And then they're going to sniff it, and then it hits their nose. And then they're going to break it apart and see how it feels. Is it sticky, dry, or whatever? Then they're going to pack that, roll it, whatever they do, and then they're going to taste it. And then that taste is going to linger for that moment and lead them right into the high, the effect, whatever that might be. And so I wanted to run down some of these topics for pheno hunting as we're selecting. And the first one I thought we could talk about is the growth traits. When you're trying to select a pheno, there's certain things that you're looking for in its traits, and one of them is vigor. Is it explosive in growth? When you flip it to transition and you flip it to flower, is it going to explode and really like take off, or is it just going to be short and squatty and just kind of do what its own thing? Um, and then along with the structure and shape is also its ability to hold its own weight. Can the plant hold the weight of its flower, or is it going to be a flip-floppy mess? Um, and often, we do scrogging techniques to kind of mitigate some of those people who are a little more floppy than others.
Yeah. That's a good trait. Just I'm gonna mention that real quick because I've had strains like I've grown over the last several years outdoors that the strong branches are really important because like where I live it gets pretty windy, right? And so you'll just see branches just start ripping off at some point. And so that I just wanted to jump in and say like that as an outdoor grower is one that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and the other thing you look at is node spacing. Are the nodes in between so compact that it's just a giant mess of vegetation that's just going to choke itself out, especially in outdoor situations. Sometimes you want something that's kind of more branching out and longer stretching. So you've got internodal spacing that allows you not to get so much moisture being locked in those little microclimates that can create, as you know, problems.
Can you so how did you want to talk about, did you just want to kind of hit each one of these or did you want to expand on any of one of these points because I might have some questions and I don't want to fuck up your flow.
No, I kind of want to just chop down them, and if we hit them as we go, we'll hit them as we go.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to say about structure is root development, because a lot of times what's going on underneath is kind of a direct reflection of what's going on above. And so root structure is also something that they look at.
I wanted to ask you about the node spacing because that's something that as a newer grower, and as I just go through season after season, I kind of better appreciate the differences and how those can help me or hurt me. Basically, especially as an outdoor grower, where you see that the ones that the nodes are really chunky and they're closer together, you might have issues with bud rot or some other sort of issues. Um, could you talk about, I guess, what you look for? Because I guess I was kind of curious if you had any thoughts or that you could kind of expand on there, especially I guess as an indoor grower, are you looking for something that's really tight and maybe easier to trim, or just what are your thoughts there? Because it seems like something that's kind of nuanced that I haven't really dabbled with myself as like a pheno hunter.
Well, I think for node spacing indoors, as I'm scrogging and I'm training, I'm going like this. And so all of those little node spaces are going to come up and hopefully come up to be kind of terminal branches. So I don't want something that's so compact that I can't train it out and get that rise. And like I said, along with that rise, you want explosive growth. So you kind of want the best of both worlds where you're getting that spacing, but also that, I mean, because the idea you've got that 4-inch square, you want a, kind of a terminal node in every square so that you're maximizing the footprint of everything your light has to offer, because when you have plants that are out of scrog, you have all the shadowing and all this underneath and the gaps in between and all of that stuff that doesn't maximize your light footprint, in my opinion. And that kind of leads to yield. One of the next boxes we want to check off is the yield factor. And that can be good or bad because some of our more exotic, more desirable strains are not big yielders. And back in the day, like I can speak to the 80s and 90s, like we had strains like Skunk Shiva that would just grow football size buds, and that didn't translate to what a lot of the indoor guys were finding and doing, especially as like OG and stuff like that started taking off and being a big part of the breeding scene. So that balance there has to be, especially for commercial guys. Commercial guys have numbers that they have to meet. So that's one of their boxes that might lean them towards a different kind of variety as someone who's at home wanting a more medicinally type effect that they're going to get specifically from a certain variety that might not produce as well as others. So yield is a factor, but it just depends on your motivation and what you're trying to do as an outcome.
How so let's talk about how you typically do this, just kind of in like in a timeline, not literally like a timeline, but I was just kind of thinking through, some folks might pheno hunt everything through all the way through to harvest, right? And then make, I guess, decisions, or they might just along the way start culling things that are the weaker stuff or whatever. They're just noticing that it's not hitting the mark on various like touch point or milestones, I guess. And they'll remove that particular pheno. Is that something that you typically do? Because it's just, as most home growers, which is I think probably most of our audience, they have limited space, right? So you can only pheno hunt so many different phenos. So I was kind of curious, could you kind of talk through your strategy to kind of go through this process?
Yeah, so like I said, it kind of goes back to your motivation, when you're hunting. For me, I'm always first looking for something that tastes amazing. Effect is usually second to that. So if it tastes amazing and it has a super good effect, I then start weighing all the other attributes and what my motivations are. And so for me, a certain amount of my garden always has to be something that produces medium to well. If not, higher end producing is even better. But then I have that certain section of the garden where I can play around with stuff that maybe doesn't yield as well, but has such amazing flavor, amazing quality, that it justifies, diversifying your garden a bit. And then, along with that yield and structure, we talk about motivation. Are you motivated to wash? Is hash what you want? Are you wanting surface area or are you wanting pretty, kind of dense, chunky nuggets? So I think whether the um, flour is, going to produce hash or whether it's just going to be a good flour smoke also has a lot to do with your yield factors and motivation and structure. All right. And so the
Yeah,
next
keep it
box that
going.
Yeah, the next box we like to check is aroma and flavor. And I really shouldn't lump those two together because they're both different sensory, um, kind of experiences. However, we always talk about those strains that taste exactly like they smell when it translates into an amazing flavor. And we have yet to get anyone, I mean anyone, to give us a concrete, solid, scientific answer. Out of all the people we've asked on the show, no one has yet given us a solid answer. So the thing about flavor, um, to me is it's going to have that punch that kind of carries through over time. If they're loud in smell and loud in flavor, typically they're going to have more longevity with that profile than something that's a little, kind of tastes good at first and then kind of gets weak. Pretty soon it'll just kind of be pretty flat.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the baby noises in the background, but I wanted to jump in to just kind of throw an interesting question. So one of the things that Joe said in the show that I wasn't sure about, he said something about how, like, have you ever smoked weed that, you know, you get high for like 15 minutes and then it wears off? And that's because it's feminized weed. I don't agree with
Yeah,
that, but
no,
at all. but
no, that's not
I was curious
valid.
what
I
your
don't
thoughts
think.
are on why is weed just kind of wearing off on people? Is it just people's tolerance is getting higher or something, or there's just like some weak ass cultivars and maybe some particular terpenes that kind of wear off quicker? I don't know. What do you think?
A lot of what you just said, it can be a lot to do with the date, how harvest date, because that is a perishable product that diminishes over time in its effect and punch. And there is a window of time where it's its most effective. And the thing about cannabis that's great is it does present all these different terpene, all these different cannabinoids, sulfur compounds, all these different profiles, esters, all of these things that contribute to the experience, the medicinal, the spiritual, all of it, that dietary, whatever it is to you, it has its own individual key. So each one is a chemistry key that comes into you. It may or may not unlock what you need it to unlock. So that one may not be the one for you, where you may find that, hey, this white thorn rose unlocks the keys for me. And so it hits you good. But like anything else, I would say in the medicinal world, you build tolerance and pretty soon it's not doing as much for you as it used to. And that leads to a lot of people doing way too many dabs, way too often, chasing a dragon. And so there's kind of, you got to be careful with that fine line. And a great way to avoid, sorry, a great way to avoid that is to mix up your cultivars. Try something different. You know, if you start bringing in different chemistry profiles, it'll help you kind of keep from getting just to where one thing is kind of burning you out too much. And
Yeah.
those tolerance breaks that people talk about, as much as they suck or sound lame, tolerance breaks do kind of help. They really do.
I need to do one of those. I have not had a tolerance break since the pandemic. Basically, when the pandemic started, I was like keep the weed rolling. And so I need I need to break the habit and do one of those like 2 week tolerance breaks or whatever. Not sure said tolerance breaks. You mean sleep? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
word. No, so for me, my tolerance breaks are is like I only hit the bubble, once in a while. I only hit the hash so often. And then like dabbing, like I'll do
Yeah.
a dab like every 3 months, I'll do a dab. But I try to keep it at the flower state so that if I ever need to burst out or get more, I can always hit the hash or I can always hit the dabs. And what I've also found is those first month and a half. Yeah, Jasper, I agree. The first month and a half of the harvest, when it's curing and the terps are really loud and the terps are really fresh, I find it packs more potency then. And as it starts to wane off into those 4, 5, 6 months, it really starts to drop off. And so for me, my harvests are about every 3.5 months. And so what I'll have to do is I'll start hitting the bubble hash after about month two, after harvesting. So then I'll start hitting the hash a little more until the terps are fresh again. And then once I'm back into the new harvest, and just kind of cycles like that. So potency is a big deal. Sean, I believe, asked um, in the chat, how many seeds do I crack at a time? And I want to bring that up because when you're cracking feminized seeds, it's different than back in the old day when you just got a pack of rags and you were hoping to get 50-50 or whatever. When you get those fems, if you're good at whatever, and their genetics are good, you're going to have, females, all females. So you need to remember that when you go to crack that pack of seeds, how many of these females can I hunt in a way that I can back it up to where if it's really good, I have a backup of it. And if it's not really good, I can trash it and move on to the next and still have room to cycle stuff through. So for me, I have to cycle through, I like to do 4 on femmes. I'll do 4 femmes at a time. And last time I hunted 2, and this time I think I got both the other ones in there. So I'll be able to hunt through that 4, see if I like them, get rid of the ones I don't, and keep the ones that I do. And so far, I've been doing the Z pie hunt, and I like the number 2 so far. Number 1 had a little better flavor, but it doesn't pack as good a punch, and it doesn't have the longevity in the high. So I'm kind of leaning towards number 2, but 3 and 4 will be in the next run. So, um, you know, I'm hoping to find ones that even surpass number 2. So the next thing I kind of want to move on checking the boxes um, is the is flowering time. Flowering time can be super important when you're checking boxes if you're planning on growing multiple strains. You can't have a bunch of uh, different week times and clocks because every individual, you know, expression cultivar has an internal clock. There are things you can do to try to trick and manipulate that. But basically, it's going to have a set amount of weeks that it likes to go before it finishes. And so, one of the boxes that you're checking in flower time is it going to be um, conducive with everybody around it? So, like, I don't want one that's going to finish in 14 weeks, like GMO, and have one that's going to finish up, in like 9 weeks or 8.5 weeks, like the Tiki Rain. So timing those flowering times of the cultivars you're choosing is also important. And that kind of brings up the the loss of the gene pool that we had in a lot of these long flowering sativas that would take 16, 18 weeks sometimes to get them to fully express themselves and be done. So flowering time in the 80s and 90s was 8 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks. So I could bang it out and I think whatever 4 hours a year or whatever the hell. So that became a selecting point for the cultivars that we were getting. So flower time to us now is also depending on the motivations of what we're doing. If I'm a commercial operator, I probably don't want anything more than 9 weeks. And if I'm at home, hell, I can rock shit for 16 weeks in my tents or in my rooms and still have plenty of smoke to get me by. And you're going to introduce a whole nother level of chemistry to yourself and to the gene pool and to everyone around you if you start looking into some of these longer flowering sativas. And Jinx at Jinx Proof, uh, he's got a lot of sativa offerings that are longer flowering sativas. And there are folks out there who do have some amazing shit that if you do want to play around with some longer flowering stuff, you can. Now, us, if we're growing outdoors, especially in certain climates, we want those things to kind of bing, bang, boom, be done. If we can get out of the ground by the end of September, we're stoked. And if we can do it in the middle of September, we're really stoked. So timing on your flowering time really depends on your motivation and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, those are great points, and great things for folks to think about. A comment I wanted to make on this topic that I just something that I've been thinking about over the last several months, I guess, is I'm excited that there's growers like Johnny from Huckleberry Hill Farms, Jason from Ridgeline Farms, and a bunch of others that are distributing through Tangled Roots. And I'm sure there's other examples as well, where these farmers that are like legacy growers, so to speak, that have genetics that have been around for 30, 40 years, maybe even more, that they're seeing that becoming seed breeders themselves or creating their own genetic lines is an economic opportunity for them, where before I don't think they were really messing with it for whatever reason. I don't really know, probably just because there was enough money to be made in flour and all that other stuff that they didn't focus the time on it. But now that they have to kind of come up with alternative revenue streams, or at least it's in their best interest to do so, they're making seeds. And so I'm really excited to see more genetics kind of come down from the mountain, so to speak, and get into the community and see what kind of genetic diversity that brings and what kind of different flavors that brings to the table.
Yeah, you know, and we also got other states with a lot of other history coming online. If you think about all of that breeding and all of that secrety Mississippi state cannabis scene and all of the stuff that kind of the G13s and all the crazy shit that came out of that. A lot of those genetics came also around from the regions of Kansas, Kentucky. I mean, I think Kentucky had the cornbread mafia, and those guys are growing fucking shit tons of weed, man. And so there's a lot of those Southern underground, East Coast underground, a lot of those underground breeding scenes have their genetic pool that they've been holding on to that are is also going to start hitting the market. And I think in the case of like Johnny and a lot of the old time growers, cuts weren't always available. So you would breed a certain amount each year so that you would have stock for the next year. And so you're always breeding and selecting and having this bank of seeds so that you always had the ability to have a heart or to have a crop the next year for whatever, however good or bad it might be. But and so while we're talking about that, and talking about the outdoor scene, one of the other boxes we like to check is resistance, disease, pest, environmental tolerances. All those things are super, super important when we're trying to check the boxes of this thing. And so, for indoor growers, your your boxes that you want to check are kind of like powdery mildew resistance. Is it going to be resistant to a lot of root diseases? Because a lot of people, most of the issues they have is happening within the root zone. And so all of those kind of tolerances, environmental tolerances, can they take a good cold snap and still, rock on for a few more, weeks,
Right.
all of that stuff, resistance is a big part of, how we select. That's one of our big boxes. I'm sure as an outdoor grower, you can kind of attest to that.
For sure, yeah. We're getting comments from the chat. We had someone from Meigs County, Ohio, saying, he's got to look for different traits based on growing in Ohio. We had a comment, funny comment from Sean. Two baby faces. Yeah, I just shaved,
Yeah, yeah,
so I
yeah.
got the two baby faces here on the show. We had a question from, let's see, Sleep with Sativa. I'm gonna throw in some chat questions. So if you guys that are watching live right now have any questions, please let us know and we'll try to get those. But Sleep with Sativa asks, JR, are you going to grow any different breeders anytime soon, or are you just sticking to Tiki or raw?
Well, I gotta say, I will. Raw sponsors my garden, and me and Brad have been friends for about a decade now. And Brad's generosity to me and my family has helped kind of get me to where I am today. And his genetics, I mean, are fire. And there's so much in his library to hunt. I've been hunting most of these Georgia pie crosses because I'm into that funky, dank, kind of earthy thing that it brings to the table. Um, So I will always probably be hunting raw gear. And lately he's just been sending me breeder cuts. I just got 4 or 5 new breeder cuts from him. So I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of raw. And Tiki blesses me with stuff like that. Tiki Rain was a gift to the community. He just gave me that to give out to as many people as I could get it to. And so I'll probably be rocking mostly raw and Tiki gear. For sure, for sure.
All right, I think there's no other questions that jump out right now. And of course, Jasper's going to jump in with his own question. What were let's see, did you have other topics? We're coming up on the last like quarter of the show or so, let's say.
That
So
that's
so
perfect.
yeah.
That's perfect. So the next one, of course, is bag appeal appearance. One of the boxes we always check. That's the first one we do when we open the bag or we open the jar. Or we look at the jar. Is does it hit our eyes? Is it how does it contrast? Because people are moving to color, or they're wanting that eye appeal of the reds and the blues and the purples and so you have to have that contrasting well with the actual silver frostiness of the flower itself. So if you look at Paloma, cherry Paloma has that great contrast of purple, red, and pink, but it also has enough silver frost that it makes it very gleaming and beautiful to the eye. Where some of these more just dark, dark purple cultivars are so dark and purple that you don't even really get to see a good frosty kind of bag appeal. So bag appeal and appearance is really big, especially if you are a commercial grower. When that hits that jar or that hopefully some way for the customer to see what the fuck they're getting. It needs to look good. It really does need to look good. And so color, contrasting trichomes, and just structure. Sometimes if you've got this super leafy, loose structure, people are going to look at it and be, I don't know, that might be harsh. You know what I mean?
We had a question that came in from Matt Nasty. He said, and sorry for my son in the background, the audio listeners. Matt Nasty asked, what's the stockiest or most indica leaning / narcotic sleep aid pain relief tiki or raw strain that you guys have worked with? I know there's a bunch of things that I just threw at you, but anything come to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind is the Georgia apple pie that Raw did. For I ran that one for a year and a half, and that was my sleepy time medicine. I used it as my nighttime smoke to kind of drift me off into wonderful la la land. But that's one of the things that we talked about earlier about checking those boxes when you're pheno hunting is you kind of get your taste and your aromas and your appearance, but when you hit that effect, what is it bringing to the table? Because some of the strains can give you the energy and the euphoria you need to plow through some mundane boring shit, or you may need that just kind of knock you down heavy, just kind of melt down in your chair and disassociate. Because I think that's one of the things that cannabis has to offer a lot of people, and I think you kind of spoke to that as you started hitting into the pandemic times. Is that was a wonderful way to just disassociate, and those disassociatives, and that's what kind of cannabis classifies as a mild hallucinogenic. When I was a kid, they always try to say, "Well, it's not really upper. Well, it's not really a downer," and so over time, they just kind of developed this idea that, well, it's just a mild hallucinogen and it's just a dissociate. And so part of that process and part of picking those cultivars is finding the effect and then categorizing them if that's your motivation. So for me, I want something that's going to be euphoric, strong, and just take me off like a rocket to get me through my day. And then when I hit after dinner, I want to hit the sleepy stuff after dinner and just kind of chill the fuck out and chill with my family and have a good time.
So when you're growing do you grow a couple strains that are in the different directions that you think you have for those different needs? Because one thing that hit with me earlier when you were talking, so when I first started growing, and even right now actually, I was started growing in a 3x3 tent. So oftentimes I'm growing like maybe just one plant in there, and so you just have like the same old weed. And like you're talking about earlier, you kind of, I've noticed that if you're smoking the same strain over and over and over again, that you kind of become tolerant to it, it seems like. So just getting something different can be nice, and I notice that it impacts me differently. But yeah, back to kind of the strategy, I guess, around strains that you're growing. Do you find yourself like, oh, I need uh like you were talking about, you've got Tiki Rain, you've got Cherry Paloma. Are you trying to add like maybe a sativa thing in there as well, or do you don't really need something
Me
like that?
myself, I kind of select for those sativa leaning hybrids. I mean, we're all pretty much getting polyhybrids, but I kind of go towards that sativa leaning side is my kind of joy. But like I said, at nighttime, I like those kind of heavier, more narcotic, more sedative type varieties. Um, and I don't know, like, you can only allocate so much space to so much stuff, like you said, and so if you are limited in your space, like you say, you can only fit 1, well, maybe try to fit 2 in smaller pots so that you can have a couple different chemistries to kinda get back and forth, as you're kind of, trying to get through, and that kinda leads us to the last little box, that we're gonna be or one of the last little boxes we're gonna talk about, and that's its harvesting process. Because, like you said before, one of the boxes we want to check is how easy is it to trim? How easy is it to hang and dry? Is it all clustered up where it's like I got to break it all apart in branches so that it's not so, socking in the humidity? And ease of trim always is, I mean, that's a factor. I mean, whether anyone wants to admit it or not, trimming can be a huge factor in the way you kind of select for those phenos. Um, and another box, I'll kind of move on from that one pretty fast, is those unique traits. Because all of us are kind of hunting the thrill of the hunt, and what we find. And, there's a lot of strains out there that'll kind of give you the same common kind of profile. But when you find that one that's a little bit different, it really kind of it becomes something cool and something to be desired. And that's one of your boxes you're checking. And um, breeding potential, I think, kind of falls in there too. So if you're seeing traits within it, smell, effect, structure that you want to work with. So, like, say you have, like, for instance, Brad hit me up with his garlic sauce. It's his GMO by Georgia Pie. And so, what he's done is he's slowed down that flowering time. So now I don't have to go 14 to 16 weeks with like you would with a GMO, but yet I still am gonna get kind of those garlicky, strong, kind of rank notes, in the flower expression itself. So part of selecting the traits, can lead into your motivation when you're doing breeding projects as well.
Awesome. We're coming up towards the end of the show, guys and gals. Or at least the end of the hour that we typically allot for an episode. So if you guys have any last questions or something like that, let us know in the chat. Something that I was kind of thinking about, I know we talked about this years ago, maybe even before we officially started the podcast, and maybe when we were just doing the cannabis shows back in the day. But I was thinking about making your own seeds. So I think we had Rasta Jeff on once talk about it, like talk through the whole process. Maybe we could have him on again sometime or something like that. Because I'm thinking about, I've never fucked with it, but it might be something that I want to do at some point, because I found a couple phenos that I like. Maybe I should dabble with trying to make them seeds or self them, because I have femmes, maybe I could self them. I don't know. There's just different topics that I think could be interesting for us as a community to kind of dabble in as well, because I just think with whatever is happening on a legal level, and people are always trying to fuck with our rights as cannabis growers, in terms of like you'll see a state legalize but they don't want you to grow it or whatever it is. We got to keep growing, and we need to keep making our own genetics and passing around genetics. So I think maybe it could be a cool community project for us all to try to inspire each other to make seeds. And yeah, not sure. And Sleep with Sativa said earmuffs. Yeah, sorry, I guess Jasper. Yeah, earmuffs, like old school. But yeah, what do you think
Yeah,
about that, JR?
I think that's great. I think part of the fun of, parting getting our journey is maybe getting to that point to where we could start doing some breeding projects, and it's not that hard. I mean, they really want to get together and they really want to do stuff. And there are, different avenues you can take, and different motivations again for what you're breeding for. um you know there's uh you know there's also precautions that you have to consider if you're going to do feminized breeding. There are some of the silvers, the colloidal silvers and silver phthalate or whatever the fuck all that shit is very toxic to dogs. Like a very little bit will just drop your dog like that. So, when you're breeding and you're thinking about doing some of these projects, you have to really understand the full scope of what you're doing before you just kind of jump into it. And there's no excuse now not to educate yourself. And I want to shout out the Do Grow Show on their live channel. I booked a show for them that we had Rasta Jeff and Brad from Raw on at the same time. And bro, those guys broke down the game where you can do breeding in solo cups, you could do trays, you could fit so many and so much, and you could really get a lot of different genetic diversity and quite a few seeds with a very little amount of space and a little amount of effort. So if you are wanting to go that feminized route, harvest your pollen that way, there's that process you need to learn and the scope of what that brings. If you want to do traditional breeding, it has its process in the scope of what it has to be successful in order for you to have good viable pollen for your projects. And that kind of begs, and I know our breeder guys hate it when I say this. It kills them when I say there's not going to be the ones anymore. So many of us are getting the ability to breed without feeling like we're going to go to jail. And so there's going to be so many people out there playing around with pollen and trying to create seeds for whatever motivation that might be. And so I really feel like the days of kind of the one, I think those days are pretty limited and gone, really.
It's definitely a limited or different kind of power, right? Because where before, when people didn't know how get access to genetics, and everything was clone only and all this other stuff, that was just a lot harder to access plants. But now access is out there. um
Yeah. Where's Jasper going?
he is going all over the place. He's gonna turn 1 year old in just a few days on Christmas.
Yes, he is. That's
So
so crazy. It happens so fast, man. That's
yeah.
unbelievable.
Yep.
So I guess we might as well kind of wrap up our last
Yeah.
topic of checking the boxes is the ease of propagation. How easy is it to make more of it? How easy is it clone? What kind of rooting speed does it have? Some cuts don't like to, necessarily root right away, and it takes them a long time. And so then you have those challenges of doing your foliar sprays to make sure the little cuttings getting the nutrition and hydration it needs until it can start developing a good, root structure. And also propagation is seed viability. Does it make really nice seeds that are viable and give you that good vigor and good consistent root growth that you're looking for? um and also like transitioning through those stages of cracking the seed itself, because those are very delicate times until it gets through its cotyledon leaves and starts growing true leaves and becomes a plant.
I think maybe they can hear us and see us again. Let's see. Let us know in chat. Sorry about that, guys. My computer just like froze all of a sudden. Sorry about that.
I saw you freeze, but on the Cannabis app, it was still going. Everybody, they're saying it's working. All right, folks, we
Sorry
are
about
back.
that. I'm for folks watching on the recording. Sorry about that. I'll try to
Jasper got
fix.
hungry. He said, "It's 5 o'clock. I'm ready for dinner. What the hell are we doing here?"
Yeah, my computer
Come
just
on.
froze up. So that's one of the difficulties when doing a live show. It's harder to cover up the fuck ups. But
I can kind of wrap it up, Q. I think we had a great show. One of the last things I want to talk about a little bit was the pheno hunt I just got done doing. I was able to hunt through but the two of the Z Pie and test some more of the stuff in production. And I had about 8 strains that I had laid out. I had the HPS Paloma, and I had the LED Paloma, the Z Pie 1 and 2, Kaiju, Hawaiian Snow Cone, um, and something else was in there. But I was able to put them out and let everybody come. I had clean bowls, clean bongs, and just kind of give their perceptions. And it was really weird to me. Mega OG was the other one was in there, and that's why I'm bringing it up. Is to me, Mega OG is fucking fabulous in every box except the effect. For some reason, it just doesn't jive with me, right? And I've had like several people tell me, "Oh my God, this is so great! I love it." And so, when you're pheno selecting, those kind of things come up. The stuff you think is amazing to you may not be amazing or what works for others. And I kind of gravitate towards the ones that everyone says, "Oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Oh, I want that."
we had a few questions that came in from the chat that I was gonna try to ask. So yeah, once again, sorry guys. I think maybe my streaming software froze up my computer or something. I don't know what happened, but anyways, the question was about. Sorry for Jasper, guys.
Don't be
Got the
sorry.
1-year-old jumping in here. Oh, so we had a question that came in from someone, I can't remember the name, but it was about kind of transition. And do you count that week of transition from veg to flower as a part of the number of weeks in flower? It's kind of interesting question. Like, when do you start the count of your flower time? Is it literally the day that you change the light schedule? And then also the additional question I had on this topic was Joe was talking about how everyone should be growing 12-1, and if you're not, you're an idiot, basically. So I was thinking, does JR grow 12-1? So yeah,
It sure
thoughts.
had me thinking. At first, I was confused, like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But I get it. And so, what you're trying to do is interrupt this phytochrome state. So, you can do your 12 hours on, go off, I think he said, for a couple hours, have 1 hour of light. But my thing is, how do I set up my timers on my lighting to do that? I haven't wrapped my head around that yet because I don't have a master controller or whatever. I just got a timer. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. And what was the first thing you said besides the Joe thing?
Transition. So how do you count?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
when you
okay.
how do you count when you started flower, basically?
Yeah, so I just reset my room. I'll bring my plants into the room under low dialed down lighting. And over the next 8 days, I'm going to incrementally dial up that lighting until they're rocking under the full blast of what the lights have to offer. And then, so once I do that, once I know they're set, I flip to 12-12. And when I flip to 12-12, I don't care if it's 9 week strain, 10 week strain. When I flip, that is week 1, day 1. And I don't count days like, oh, this is day 54. All that shit's confusing to me. I go week 1, day 1, week 1, day 2, all the way till I get to week 2, day 1, week 4, day 1, week 8, day 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how I kinda count my strains out because if someone hands you a variety and says, "Oh, this is an 8-week strain," well, that's kind of, it's kind of relative. It might be exactly an 8-week strain, but it might not, depending on whatever. So it's just easier in my mind to keep track. As soon as I flip it, I let it go through that full cycle, and then boom, that's week 1, day 1. Then I just count on from there.
Great. I had a last question I'll ask you that someone asked this earlier, and I'll try to kind of rephrase it ish, but or try to get the essence of it. They were essentially asking when do you harvest? So they were like, do I select based on trichomes? Do I select based on looks, like when the flower looks the best, and so on and so forth? And I think like when you're a new-ish grower and you're still building up your confidence of when you harvest, it's easy to just read online, yeah, it's the trichomes, bro, and I get it. But sometimes when you're looking at the trichomes, the flower doesn't necessarily look ready, and so that can kind of make you question yourself. And so I was kind of curious what your thoughts were.
I think that's something that's kind of ever changing because I hear different opinions about judging your trichomes. And again, that goes to your motivation. If you're washing and you're a hash maker and you're looking for a terpene profile that might express itself better at week 7 than it does at week 8.5 or 9. So sometimes your motivation for harvest is based on your hash making. Other times it's just your flowers. So me, I'm always like super milky with a tiny bit of amber. That's how I kind of like to roll because I like that kind of euphoric, uppy kind of thing. But all of that maturity in the flower changes the chemistry and the terpene profile. So you may go so long looking for a bunch of amber heads and kind of miss your window on the terpene profile that's going to add to the entourage effect. That might be the actual chemical key that you're looking for. So it's really tough for new people because, in the beginning, before we even had the little digital microscopes and shit, it was always, judging by the red hairs, when are the hairs done? And you can also look at the structure of the flower, and you can see when the flower is still bursting out new growth, and then it just kind of stopped doing that. And then you can also kind of look at your gland heads, your terpene profiles, and what your desired effect. I mean, if you're wanting something super heavy and super sleepy, I'll let it go pretty amber, and that's kind of the complaint people have with rosin and rosin makers is sometimes they're selecting really immature heads, and the chemistry of what people are looking for in the longevity of the high isn't there. So you may get this shoot straight up and just fall right off after like 5 or 10 minutes, and you're like, oh, I need another dab. It's kind of cracky in that nature. So the maturity and the longevity of your heads have a big determination on the chemistry profiles and the entourage effect of what you're going to get out of your smoke. Oh, one other question someone asked me was, how am I liking the transition from back soil to living soil? And I got to tell you, I've kind of developed this system. I think that's probably going to work pretty good. I'm doing the Coots mix amended with using the Southern Oregon Bokashi I'm adding in there, and also the Frass Valley insect frass. And I'm making my Coots mix. I'm letting all the biology happen, getting all my arbuscular fungi hairs growing up. And then I'm taking that and I'm blending it in with a bag, this time of the Tupper by Royal Gold. Michigan Matt is a friend of the show, and he uses Tupper a lot in his facility. And so I know it's a good product because he has to get testing. If it was a dirty, shitty product, he wouldn't use it or he wouldn't pass testing. So I'm using it to blend in with my Coots mix to give me oxygenation, and it's also going to give me surface area for the microbes to kind of set up shop and do stuff. I found with the Coots mix that we did that video on, it seemed to be really dense, and I needed something a little more airy and kind of fluffy. And so I blended in that tuber for this run, and all of my used soil from the last run, I'm going to be do a half strength amendment, and then that'll be all the veg soil that I use for staging, for moms, and for cupping. And so I'll be able to reuse that soil all one more time. And then as it gets in the 2 gallon pot, that the root systems in 4 to 5 weeks pretty much consume everything. And so at that point, they will go outside into my veggie garden soil pile, and I'll be able to amend that. And then I'll use that to feed my family with the next year's veggie cycle. So that's how I'm trying to cycle through my living soil cycles, because I'm doing about 4 harvests a year, 3 to 4 a year. So I'll be able to cycle it out to where I have a really nice, healthy, living veggie soil that I can use for the fams.
This baby just bit me.
Ah, good job, Jasper. Oh, one other question was, is cherry paloma good for pain? And it's good for acute pain. Like, it's gonna kind of help you knock that number down from, like, say you're at an 8 and you hit it, it's gonna, when you hit it, the smoke, it's gonna knock it down a couple numbers. But if you're really looking for really good longevity, pain control, the Tiki Rain in RSO in the edible form, even if you just make butter, if you make cannabis or cannabis tinctures, or even if you make like the vegetable glycerins, whatever. The Tiki Rain RSO is the most effective pain control that I've had in ever. And this last run, I just got my RSO batch from the outdoor run I did, and I did one Tiki Rain, I did one Cherry Paloma, and I did one Kaiju Kush, which is really heavy and kind of narcotic-y. And so I blended all those flowers together and made RSO with those. And so that's the new RSO that I have that I made with the cultivars that I selected for that purpose.
Nice. Well, as we think about next year, if you guys have been listening and watching the show this far into the episode, probably means that you watch or listen to our show on a regular basis. So if you have thoughts on topics that you'd like us to talk about or explore in future episodes next year, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. It'll just help us think about what we want to do next and potential guests, potential topics. JR's got a pack of seeds. Did you want to talk about those real quick before we end the show?
Yeah. So one of the cool things about having our relationship with Brad and Tiki is they kick us down stuff to give away. And so we like to reward the folks who stick around. And I really want to shout out to the 1,000. The 1,000 core viewers that hit our episodes almost every time. You folks are the ones that carry us, and we appreciate you a lot. And so I want to be able to kick stuff down, and I want to make it fun for you guys. And I always put it on cue as a way to figure out how to give them away. But we got some reg seeds today. We got Z Skittles Cake
Sorry.
by Tropical Z Skittles, and we're gonna, like I said, Q will figure out a way to give away these, and we're super thankful to the people who hang out to the very end, and to the 1,000 who show up every time to watch our episodes, regardless.
That was a great point. The 1,000, yeah, it's totally true. We usually hit around 1,000 ish, views on our YouTube videos. So there's definitely like a core group of people there or whatever. And of course, some people are one week or the other, but the point is there's a core group of you guys out there that support us, and we really appreciate your support. Same thing to the supporters on other platforms as well. We've got Spotify, Pocket Casts, any of the podcast platforms you can find Cannabis on there. But Spotify just recently, they revamped their apps and stuff like that. So it's like you can even preview the episode in Spotify now, which is cool. And you can leave comments. So leave a comment over there if you're on Spotify. But if you want to enter this giveaway that JR is doing for that pack of seeds, you're going to need to comment on YouTube. And I don't know, should they say like a magic word?
Yeah, I like that one. I like that
What
one.
should the word be?
Growers love, y'all.
All right, so leave growers love in a comment. You could say other shit too, but leave growers love in the comment as well. And on this particular YouTube video, and we will pick a winner at some point, and not as a live stream comment, guys. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come back after this episode ends, or switch the chat over to the comments and leave a comment, and we'll pick someone from there. Otherwise, we really appreciate everyone's support. You guys have been listening to us do these episodes practically every week for the last like 2 years. So we really appreciate your guys' support. We've got more on the way. January, I'm going to be out of town for parts of January. I've got to go to Massachusetts for work. So we're going to kind of work around that. But, otherwise, before we know it, we'll be back into the regular swing of things of regular weekly episodes. Any other things that I wanted to mention? Just like I was saying earlier, send us feedback on things that you'd like us to talk about or to cover. It should be an interesting grow season 2025. I might have to redo my entire backyard grow setup. I might document that. And I got some real buckets from Scotty, so I might try to document trying to figure out that.
I can give you some good advice. I've grown in the real buckets and have done well. So I can give you some help on that with some pointers on that.
Nice.
And then for me, kind of moving forward into 2025, I'm excited about getting some new guests on and visiting with some old friends and getting out to some of these events. We've got the Emerald Cup that we're definitely going to do. We've got the Do Grows Cup that we're definitely going to do, and hopefully I'll be able to do some local events, and Q as well will be able to do some local events. So yeah, we're going to try to get out there this year and try to get the word around. And so if you guys know of any really cool events on the West Coast or anywhere, definitely hit us up. And again, if you want to win the pack of seeds, you have to make a comment in the post in a post after the show airs. But I am stoked to see how many people said growers love. That was awesome, right? That was awesome.
Yeah, in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to everyone in the new year. My advice to everyone is just stay close to the ones that you love. And if you don't really see it happening in front of your face, question it.
There you go. Well, let's see. We had someone was asking if we were going to go to the DGC Cup. JR goes like every year.
Yeah.
I might go. I don't know. We'll see. My current gig's pretty cool, so maybe I'll be able to get the time off. We'll see. With the baby and everything, we'll see what kind of
Come on,
happen.
Jasper.
But yeah, we are looking forward to it. Emerald Cup will be in like April, May, or whatever, so that'll be coming up not too long from now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to start gearing up for that.
Yeah. Well, cool guys and gals, thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great rest of your week. We really appreciate your support, everyone, for tuning in to all the episodes, telling your friends, leaving a comment, liking the video on YouTube. All that kind of stuff just helps the episode spread, so we appreciate it. And I won't kind of do much more than that. We hope you have a great holiday and a great new year. And as always, JR,
Growers love.
growers love, guys. Peace.